You're on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Welcome to our show. Welcome Facebook Live and our audience over on YouTube. Glad to have you with us live tonight. We've got a great show lined up for you. In fact, 2 brand new episodes coming your way. Can you believe we're already on episode number 35 of our little venture? Ike McFadden and Pete Haviland join me tonight. Ike, 35 episodes and we're still here.
Yes, we are. And you know what I've been thinking about every single episode for 35 episodes now is breakfast food.
Yeah, you know, and we've never really discussed breakfast food, and we haven't gotten into that. And you know what? Tonight, we're pretty much going to follow that same rule and not go down the breakfast food route. But at the end of the show, we're going to give you a treat. We're all going to let you know where our favorite breakfast food place is. So stick around for the end of the show. Pete, you got a favorite breakfast place you're going to reveal later?
Oh, sure.
Okay, good deal. All right. Ike, been an interesting week so far. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, looked at your alarm clock, or I should say maybe fallen asleep, and you notice 11:11?
That's interesting. I've never noticed that particular time, but I have, and I'm being serious here, I have been in a habit of waking up at specific times in the past. And sometimes it'll go on for, not every day, but sometimes for years. There'll be, for some reason, I've woken up at around 5:21, 5:22 for quite a while now, and I've never really known what's behind that. Why do you ask?
Well, it's just a phenomena. You know, I know I can't say it happens every other day, but every day or two, I'll look at my watch and it's 11:11, whether it's at night or in the morning. It's just a weird phenomenon. We've got a guest on tonight who's going to talk about that. He's also going to talk about another thing, mind control by the government, secret societies, and others. Yeah, it's a real thing. Could we be going through that right now in this pandemic? We'll hear about that. Pete Haviland, also our producer, joining us as well. Pete, you know a bit about fallen angels, the devil, and demons?
I know a little bit about it, yes.
Well, we're going to hear about that as well, because our guest tonight is an author and covers a wide array of subjects. Ike?
That's right. We have Larry Flaxman with us. He's on a mission to inform those of us who, like all of us here, are fascinated by the paranormal and fringe topics. He's a best-selling author of 9 books, including 11:11, The Time Prompt Phenomenon, The Meaning Behind Mysterious Signs, Sequences, and Synchronicities. He's also the author of The Grid, Exploring the Hidden Infrastructure of Reality, and Viral Mythology. Larry continues to write books on cutting-edge research that tends to leave readers, like ourselves, open-mouthed in disbelief.
And of course, for nearly 2 decades, Larry has been actively involved in paranormal research and hands-on field investigation with a strong emphasis on attempting, you'll like this, Ike, to apply the scientific method to the unexplained phenomenon. Flaxman is redefining the field of paranormal research with his focus on connecting quantum physics to human consciousness via the use of real-time EEG analysis of the experiencer. He's also the president and senior researcher of the Arkansas Paranormal Anomalous Studies Team, which has become one of the nation's most respected paranormal research organizations. Please welcome Larry Flaxman to the show. Larry, welcome here. We're glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's definitely an honor.
Well, Larry, I've got to always ask our guests, there's got to be some type of personal connection or something that happened to get one involved with paranormal research. Was there an experience you have had or a story behind it?
That's a great question, and it's one I get asked all the time. Unfortunately, no, I really don't have any type of seminal story that kind of set the tone or direction of my work. But I guess I'll kind of lead with, as I've gotten older, I have certainly seen my share of death, family, friends, et cetera, passing away. And, it's sort of, the meaning was not lost on me for sure. And, that realization of your own mortality kind of sinks in a little bit, and it causes, at least it caused me to kind of search both inward and outward for answers. So as far as paranormal stuff, when you hear the word paranormal, generally people automatically think ghosts, right? That's the very first thing when someone says paranormal experience, but it's really not. So it really kind of encompasses anything that traditional science currently doesn't explain. So I've always had a fascination with that stuff from as long as I can remember, whether it was UFOs, ancient alien type things, Bigfoot, really any type of unexplained phenomena. I've always really had kind of an interest in, but really nothing specific, no specific experience to speak of. Just, as I've gotten older, I've realized that those are the things that I'm really interested in and I want to study.
Well, so Larry, let's talk about your book, Demons, the Devil, and Fallen Angels. I know a little bit about this. I've read to some degree, as I'm sure you have. Like, if you look back in history, you read things like Gnostic Christianity or even old, Greek, Roman mythologies, a lot of pagan stuff. There's a lot of this stuff that seems to come from much older sources, and they get incorporated into more modern religions. Someone who might have been a nice person, a nice god or deity in the past, gets put into sort of this devil or demonic role in the present. Do you theorize that these things are actually real, or are they just based on religion and myth? How do these things kind of come together?
So the devil's in the details, literally, right? So, if you look throughout both religious and sacred texts, folklore and myths, legends, fairy tales, all of those kind of ideas, there are these thoughts and manifestations of dark entities, right? So, is it something that is based in fact or reality, or is it really more of kind of exactly that, urban legend or fiction? So, I think honestly, my personal opinion is that probably a large majority of it was urban legend, right? So kind of based on fear, a lot of that. So almost as if when you talk about religion today, you automatically kind of think about heaven or hell automatically, right? You've got that kind of dichotomy there. So I think the idea around demons and the devil and different fallen angels and, any type of dark spirit, I think a lot of that comes from kind of that similar archetype where, there are some similarities or some, so yeah, to answer your question, sorry, I do. I think a large majority of the things that we read about are simply based on fiction. And I think a lot of that is kind of based on fear too. And it's, really to try to scare you into living the good life.
Larry, this is Pete. So do you think because of that fear, we tend to manufacture the experiences that people talk about dealing with the devil?
I do, to a certain extent. So I have a fairly close friend of mine that considers himself a quote demonologist. And, I've had conversations with him and, I think anything could be manifested into reality, to physical reality based on thought. So, I think if a person has an experience that they would consider to be demonic, or they have some type of experience with a dark entity, I think that is an internalization in many cases that has externalized. So it is some type of a psychological phenomena in many cases that has the ability to take on physical form and construct. That's my personal belief. Now, in my 25 plus years of seeing this or being involved in this, I have not personally experienced anything like that. I've not seen any type of demonic, any type of devil, dark creature, no Bigfoot, no succubus, really haven't experienced any of those things, heard lots of anecdotal stories, but, no real scientific evidence of that. So that kind of leads me to believe, certainly there's a lot of smoke here. There's a lot of smoke, and usually when there's smoke, there's fire. So I think the people that are experiencing things believe truly what they're experiencing, but as it stands, unfortunately, there's no scientific evidence for those things actually existing.
What would you consider that scientific evidence to be?
some type of physical phenomena. I know it's probably bandied about a lot, but I don't know what type of physical phenomena would be required to prove that. Maybe some type of ectoplasm, if that's a real thing, or some type of object that was definitively proven to not be of our current technological means, something like that. I mean, something that I think would be scientifically validated as potentially not being something that could have been hoaxed. I've just not seen anything, Pete, honestly. I mean, and I'd be the first one to be yelling from the treetops if I really believed that phenomena was something that was real. But I've personally just never had the experience. And all the folks that I've talked to, with my background in psychology, everything my gut is telling me that they've told me really points to there being some internalization or some internal psychological driver that's kind of, pushing that to externalization.
Larry, let me ask you something. You've mentioned psychology a good bit and archetypes. Have you read any of, Carl Jung and his? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So let's assume then for a minute that you're right and this stuff starts as some kind of psychological process that's internal to people. Then there really it could still be real in some fashion.
Absolutely.
But it's like, how would that manifest to anyone outside the person?
Well, I think that's kind of the point, despite the movies and, the little girl throwing up pea green soup, I don't hear stories about that type of phenomena occurring in real life. You really, at least I don't personally, know anyone that has experienced some type of demonic possession, for instance. Something that is absolutely not attributable to a psychological factor. But yeah, I do. I really think that it is certainly possible to externalize something and manifest your reality, in essence, to create that external physical persona. So, absolutely, those things are absolutely real. They're real to the person that's experiencing them. And to an extent, they're probably real to, anyone that would be within proximity or close to that person. But, is that a repeatable finding? Is it something that, that there would be any scientific basis for understanding or trying to, kind of comprehend? No, probably not. But again, I've not had any personal experience with anything. I'd, probably love to. I say that, but maybe not. But yeah, I would love to be, I'd love to be wrong, and I'd love there to be something a little bit more to it, but I've just not experienced it.
Larry, I want to ask you about your book, and you talk about fallen angels. I'm sure you're familiar with the term fallen angels and how it's tied into the Anunnaki and also the Nephilim. Sure. Is that something you've researched as well? And is that what you're maybe you can talk a bit about that, how fallen angels tie into those terms?
So when you talk about the Anunnaki and some of the fallen angel aspects of that, I mean, you're really kind of going back all the way back in the Old Testament, talking in Genesis, I believe. So God allegedly said, let us create man in our image, right? And that gold in the land of Eden was good and all that. So do I think that I guess it's a question. Are you asking me, do I think there's a connection between what the Anunnaki are and some of those things, or where specifically are you going with that?
When you're talking fallen angels, is that something? Are you talking the Anunnaki? Because a lot of times they are termed as the fallen angels, and when they mated with human women, they produce the Nephilim. So when you talk fallen angels, it goes way back to what the Sumerians first came out with this.
It does.
Are you talking along those lines with the legends of fallen angels? Is that something you're addressing in your book?
Yeah, absolutely. Sumerian texts, some of the most early ancient Sumerian texts talk about the Anunnaki, and they describe them as those from heaven to earth came. So the Anunnaki very strongly believe that these were extraterrestrials, I guess, for lack of a better word, that came from another planet or came from the galaxy down to earth, mated with humankind, and then had offspring. So yeah, and if you look at some of the fringe archaeology findings of today, they're starting to find, and then they're starting to report in more mainstream sources, large bones that are being found, and different skeletal structures that don't match any current known physiological characteristics of the hominids. So yeah, I do think there is there's something there. Again, where there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? And I do think that there is something to the Nephilim for sure. Now, is that something, based on current religious ideas, is that something that will ever come to light? I don't know. Regardless, it really redefines a lot of what we believe about not only our own culture and kind of the ascension of our culture, but it redefines a lot of what religious doctrine teaches us.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So would that idea ever be something that, would be a mainstream, popular communication? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but my gut tells me probably not, simply because it would rewrite pretty much everything that we think that we know, or everything that we've been taught from birth.
So let me switch topics here a little bit. You hear, or I hear, certainly in the media and movies and in books and comic books and so forth, that allegedly Hitler had some interest in occult stuff. So I've sort of seen references to that a lot of places in pop culture. But at least as far as I'm aware, the more I've tried to dig down into the actual literature about that, I've not run across too much. Can you give us a little more background on, was it something that was really going on? Was it just hearsay? Was it a big project? What do you know about that?
So I don't know that much about it. I've done a little bit of research into it. And from what I understand, Hitler was absolutely fascinated with the occult, and anything from any culture, basically, that referenced any type of non-traditional archaeohistory was something that he was interested in collecting. And from what I understand, he had amassed a very large collection of Sumerian cuneiform text, as well as a lot of pre-Egyptian type, pre-dynastic type artifacts as well. Obviously I don't know that for a fact, but I've heard that as well. And that was something he was absolutely fascinated with. And that, it kind of ties in with the whole idea of Nazism to an extent, about, being the greatest culture or whatever. And, by a lot of what he was able to accomplish was by taking from others. So I think there's probably some legitimacy to that. I don't know for a fact that that's the case, but in popular literature and kind of legend and lore, there is absolutely basis for us to believe that Hitler did have a fascination with that, and then he amassed a very large collection of stuff.
Well, we do know that, as far as I recall, we do know that a lot of the symbolism, like there was that Hitler was into sort of these Norse iconic.
He was.
Myths, runic scripts that you see in some of even their printed work. It sort of seems like, regardless of whatever he may have believed or not believed, that he was at least tying into this long train of mythology.
Even the swastika itself, it is an ancient religious icon from Eurasia. I mean, it was used as a symbol of divinity and spirituality in Indian religions. It's something that, again, he took from another culture and kind of, reappropriated it for the Nazi belief system. But yeah, really, if you think about it, though, the idea of studying other cultures, kind of fringe religious beliefs or fringe ideas, it really kind of way predates Hitler as well. I mean, that's something that, for centuries, different rulers have done. I mean, that's not a new phenomena by any means. I mean, you saw Napoleon did the same thing. Genghis Khan did the same thing. Throughout history, they would collect the spoils of war, oftentimes, which would include some of those religious iconographies from the cultures.
I wanted to move on real quickly to your book, 1111. What's the significance of 1111? Ike wakes up at a certain time every night. Is it a phenomena, a coincidence, or something more meaningful?
So I don't want to spoil it all unless, here on the show, I certainly would urge your listeners to buy the book and read.
Sure.
But there is an actual scientific reason for that experience. Wow. So that the repetitive number synchronicities that you experience, there is a reason why you do experience those things, and certainly during specific. There are specific reasons why you do experience those numbers, and some people experience them more often than others. It's interesting, when my writing partner and I were kind of tasked to write that book, our publisher approached us and asked us if we'd be interested in writing a book about 1111. And, neither one of us had any idea what it was, to be honest. I mean, that wasn't something that I was familiar with. I was wholly unfamiliar with the entire concept of repetitive number sequences. And we thought, you know what, it might be a pretty cool book to write. So we ended up writing it. And interestingly enough, as we were writing the book, we started noticing different synchronicities within our own lives. Yeah. So that kind of begs the question, were those things always there prior to writing the book, or did we become more aware of it from writing the book? But it's a very common phenomena. Pretty much everyone experiences it at some point in their life. Again, I don't want to give it away too much, but I'll give you kind of an example of this. Say you've decided to buy your dream car, right? And it is a purple Maserati, right? So you save up your money. You never see these cars on the road. So that's what you want. You don't want the typical Honda, Ford, Toyota. You want a purple Maserati. So you save up your money, you go down to the dealership, you plunk down your money up for your Maserati, sign away your life, you pull off the lot. And what happens? You start seeing purple Maseratis.
I knew it. I knew you were going there with that. That's exactly what happens.
So were those purple Maseratis there the whole time, and you just didn't have need to see them?
Sure.
Or did the purchase of that purple Maserati somehow, create some entangled scenario where you're now experiencing that? So
that's
a little
exactly
food for thought there.
That's exactly where I thought you were going with that. That makes a lot of sense. Real quickly, we're about to wrap up. Mind Wars, a history of mind control, surveillance, and social engineering by the government, media, and secret societies. Larry, are we going through that right now with COVID?
Gosh, I was wholly not prepared to answer that question. I did not know you were going to ask me that. So my opinion, I do think that that's something that has been occurring for in increasing numbers over the years. But during the current pandemic, I do think that it is probably kicked up a notch from where it was. Now that we're talking about vaccine passports and having some sort of authorization that you carry with you on your cell phone. I mean, it's kind of next level. 1984 type stuff, honestly. Sure. But do I think the government is spying on us any more than they have in the past? I don't know the answer to that. I'd like to think not, but I know realistically that it occurs. It occurs much more often than you think that it does. But, I think the pandemic has probably, if nothing else, opened all of our eyes, hopefully, to the different possibilities.
Well, Larry, let me ask you something else on that topic. Something I've wondered about is, and you mentioned, well, is the government doing X or Y any more now than they used to? Something I've wondered is it possible that maybe, let's say with good intention, they're mistaken, they say things that are in error, they make honest mistakes about what they communicate, or have an ulterior motive, but maybe it's just now with technology we're more aware of it in real time, that it's harder. In the past, when you had 3 networks, if someone said something that was false, well, you could probably go your entire life without ever noticing it.
Right. Yeah, I think absolutely with the advent of technology and certainly the internet, we have much faster retrieval of information and data, and it's much easier, and there's pros and cons to that, right? So, every one of us that I know of, at least personally, carries our own personal surveillance device with them everywhere, every place we go. Yeah. That's our cell phone, right? So whether you want to believe it or not, your phone is to an extent listening to you. Now, I know on the Apple phone, they've kind of tightened up some of the restrictions around GPS location and use of the microphone, et cetera. But does that mean that there's not still back doors built in that we don't even know about? Those are just the things that we've caught, and kind of, raised the specter of surveillance there. And, Apple said, well, we'll put in controls to prevent some of these apps from spying on you. But those are just the ones that we know about. But, I think to a large extent also, we have accepted it as a culture that's just the way it is. Every house has a Ring doorbell just about. We've all got tracking devices in our cars, OnStar. We're all on social media. We are constantly communicating with Big Brother to an extent. I mean, everything goes through, pipes through the internet and eventually funnels through the CIA with some of the edge routers for the United States, at least, all kind of funnels through that. So, we are amassing massive amounts of data on a daily basis about each one of our travels, our purchasing habits, our messaging. Pretty much our entire lives, to a large extent, have become digital. So, having the ability to monitor that stuff really isn't a far stretch. It's pretty easy when you have the technology in the back end to make that stuff happen. You've also got the back end and the technology to be able to listen and use it for nefarious purposes. So I think it's been there. It's been getting more and more to the point where we are today. I mean, I couldn't imagine today completely giving up technology. Could you? Could you imagine shutting off your cell phone, shutting down your Facebook account, and not going back to where you were? I couldn't imagine. We've become reliant on it. Yeah, so it's sort of, while it's you've kind of got the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, right? So you kind of accept some of those losses of freedoms that we know are probably occurring with those digital nannies that we have. But it comes at the cost of convenience, and it comes at the cost of losing some of our anonymity.
Well, and it's also interesting in that I have nephews, nieces, and so forth, and who are younger, obviously, and we're kind of one of the last generations that's going to be aware of this big shift.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Larry, you've written 9 books. You're with the Paranormal Research Society, and you also run a nonprofit.
I do. Yeah, I am probably, of all of my accomplishments, I'm probably most proud of that. It's called the Bridge of Compassion, and it's an organization where our charter is to provide clothing to unsheltered homeless. So we do a big coat drive every winter, and then we do a fall drive as well, where we basically distribute clothing and necessary supplies to the chronically unsheltered populace. So very proud of that. It's very enriching work. It's something that has a significant meaning to me.
That's in very honorable work, and we appreciate the work you do there. Where can people find the Bridge of Compassion on the web?
www.thebridgeofcompassion.org.
Okay. And for your books, where can they find you on your website?
So all of my books you can purchase either in traditional brick and mortar stores, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Borders, or online. I believe Amazon has most of my books available as well. My website is www.larryflaxman.com. I've also got a new YouTube channel that I started about 2 months or so ago that I've been kind of spending some time with. So you can find what I'm up to and some of my projects and interests on one of those sites.
And we'll put some links to your to your website in our social media post for the show. Larry Flaxman, thanks for being here on the show. Fascinating subjects. We could talk all night with you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. All right. Fascinating. There's a lot to unpack there, Ike and Pete. If you could say one of the most striking things you heard, I'll start with you, Pete. What was your takeaway?
Well, I always find Larry's talks and lectures very stimulating. I enjoyed it all tonight.
Ike?
I'm going to say Waffle House. That's my breakfast place, really.
Waffle House. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, the fact that they are finding large bones, and they're finding stuff out there. There's also a legend, and I didn't get a chance to ask Larry about this, but there's also rumors that when they would find these skeletal remains of alleged giants, that for some reason people would come take them away. And I don't know, Pete, you may have read this too, but I'm hearing that it was possibly the Smithsonian. Have you heard that too, Pete?
Yeah, I did hear that as well. And of course, the Smithsonian states that it's not true, but.
Right. Of course, they're going to deny it. That's the way to go. Okay, so let's get on to our news for the show for this episode. We've got our next guest on deck, folks. So next episode is going to be on right after this. But Ike, do you have a story to discuss with us for this episode?
I'll try to keep it really brief because I know we're running a little bit long. It was Friday the 13th, not long ago.
Yeah.
And, I had always heard, I was curious about the background of this. I had always heard that was related to the roundup of the Templars at the end of the Crusades. Does anyone here on the show know anything about where Friday the 13th, being superstitious, actually comes from? Pete, do you know that?
No, I do not.
Great.
All right. That's a new one on us, Ike. Next time, bring a little research to back up your statements here. But yeah.
Waffle House?
Waffle House. There we go. Okay. Here's my story for the night. Ike, you're going to love this one. This next story comes to us from allthatisinteresting.com. It dates back to 2019, but it still remains a mystery, and it's crazy. Okay, get this. It seems a 36-foot long humpback whale was found in the middle of an Amazon jungle. Officials were alerted to the carcass by swooping scavenger birds. Hate it when that happens. When they arrived on the site of Brazil's Marajo Island, they found the body of a 10-ton decomposing humpback whale. Just how did it get there? They aren't quite sure. Officials theorize it may have been washed ashore during a storm, but that usually happens near a beach, not inland, in the mangrove about 50 feet away from the beach. They planned on studying the whale, but in order to bring it back to study it, they had to dismantle it. And that sounds exactly what it sounds like. They cut it up, took it away. So there you go. Humpback whale in the middle of the jungle. Ike, your theory?
I got to say, that seems a little far-fetched. I'm not sure I buy this. Is this why you were raising the whole...
There's a picture of it, dude. We
well,
showed a picture.
Is this why you were saying like the Smithsonian was sneaking in and stealing giant stuff? Is that why you brought that up a minute ago?
You didn't get the whale though, but yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. Okay, Pete, your theory on this?
I was thinking maybe they were trying to carry it from somewhere and it broke and fell.
I'm sorry, who is they, Pete?
Yeah.
Whomever.
The whale people of the Amazon?
Yeah,
that's the one.
People of the
you know them well.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're going to wrap up this episode. Okay, real quick, we promised you our favorite breakfast places. I'm going to go first. Huddle House. That's on the top of my charts. Pete?
Waffle House.
Waffle House. And Ike?
That's 2 for Waffle House. I could eat literally every meal for the rest of my life at Waffle House.
Yeah, and I think our producer or our director, Nathan's going with Waffle House too. Okay, all right. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Road Beyond Podcast. We are all over social media. You can find us as the Road Beyond Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm posting a bunch of stuff there. Hey, our next guest is on deck. We're going to be talking some cool stuff in just a few moments. Stay tuned, Facebook Live and YouTube. We'll see you next time on the Road Beyond.